Take Back Your Health Now, Episode 35.
You're listening to the Take Back Your Health Now podcast, the show that interviews the top doctors, athletes, trainers, and entrepreneurs to help you find the holy grail of health. Now here's your host, Dr. Dan Margolin.
This is Dr. Dan Margolin with another segment of Take Back Your Health Now, where we pull out all the stops in search of health's holy grail. We're very excited to have Mr. Chris Kidawski. He has been in the health and fitness profession for over 17 years. His journey started in 1999 when he quit playing football for the University of Buffalo and decided if he can't be in the NFL, he was going to help others get there. Chris has trained Navy SEALs, professional athletes, including NFL Star Davone Bess. In addition to being a CrossFit coach, Chris published his latest book, Everspace, utilizing the power of God and neuroscience to find the stillness within. Chris, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dan. Are you sure you're talking about the right guy? That sounded like a lot of stuff right there.
That's good, man. It sounds real good. That's why we got you on this show, my friend.
Thank you.
We got you on the show.
You know, I try to, when people are always asking for a bio, I try to write as humbly as possible. And then I listen to the list and I say, and I start to think to myself, like, wow, I guess I have done a couple of things that are noteworthy.
Yeah, humble schmumble, my friend. You're awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, my pleasure. So let's start like just from what made you want to work with high level athletes? Like what started that journey?
Oh man, you know, to talk about that, I'm actually going to have to fast forward and then rewind.
So why don't you rewind first then? Rewind first. Well,
okay.
Let's start from the beginning.
So I've always been in love with sports. I've been playing sports ever since I was 5-6 years old. I started off playing golf. My dad was huge into golf, and it was a must that all of us boys played golf as well. And then as I started to get older, I really started to crave a little bit more contact. You know, the testosterone starts rushing. And,
right.
Then we started to play ice hockey because I grew up in Buffalo, New York. So we started to play ice hockey when we were real young. My dad would take us to the Buffalo Sabres games, and I was just fascinated with how these guys moved and used their body on ice. And I was like, you know, I want to do that. So I played ice hockey for a long period of time, and then it was basketball, and then it was football, and so on down the line. And then I started to realize when I was getting poor grades in college, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to be on the 6 or 7 year plan here. I have things that I want to do with my life. I quit playing football,
right.
And I was like, you know what, there's no way. I actually went and I was a collector for M&T Bank for about a year. So I was making really good money, but I was sitting behind a desk all day for 8 hours.
Oh, something you thought was not you, huh?
No, I was just like, this is not me. What am I doing? And I started to realize, I said, you know what? The only way that I'm going to be happy, I'm happiest in the gym. The only way that I'm going to be happy is if I'm constantly doing something active. So there was a position that opened up at the Buffalo Athletic Club where I was training for a programmer. Now, a programmer is not really a personal trainer. You kind of ease people from being sedentary into an active lifestyle. So
okay.
You give them some pretty easy exercises to do. You talk to them a little bit about nutrition. And everybody had always enjoyed the programs that I was doing when they would start. So my boss, Mike and Nathan, he sat me down one day and he was like, "Are you serious about doing this?" I said, "Absolutely. I love it. I don't feel like I'm working. This is awesome." And he said, "If you are serious about being a personal trainer or being in the fitness industry," he said, "the best certification is to get a certified strength and conditioning specialist certification, CSCS." So he said, "Here's my book, order your own. Here's my book, but start reading it and get yourself set up for the test." So
how do you do that? Like, how do you get that? How do you get certified for that?
You have to read the textbook. You take a test. The test, I believe, is about 4 to 5 hours. So it's 3 hours written, and then it's a 3-hour practical. And what the CSCS does is you cannot have their certification unless if you have a 4-year degree.
Okay.
So at the time, I mean, this is 1999. At the time, it was a step above everything else. At that time, you could go online and go on AFA.com and get a AFA certification for, I think it was $30, and it was a 30-minute test.
Oh, okay. So this was really at the highest level of that.
Yeah, and their textbook, I was learning kinesiology, I was learning endocrinology, I was learning physiology, I was learning nutrition. I mean, it very, very comprehensive. I don't know if, I'm sure things have evolved since then, but I literally sat down and read that textbook cover to cover in a week. And I was
wow. So you got fascinated by it, huh?
Yeah, this is the first time that I sat down and I was reading a textbook and I was actually sponging the information. I couldn't wait to read more. I was going back and rereading. I was highlighting. I was like,
well, it's funny. It sounds like you really connected with your purpose, right? It sounds like you really went, wow, this is who I am.
Absolutely. And the funny part about it was from that day forward, whenever I would meet a girl, and she would take me home to her mom, I started to get introduced as, Mom, this is the guy I told you about who knows what he wants to do with his life.
Wow.
And I was just like, wait a minute. I was like, why do I keep on getting introduced like that? But the interesting part about it was, when you're called to do, and this is where my book, The Everspace, kind of comes in. When you're doing what you're called to do, the information for you is always readily available. And I started to get nervous at times because people would ask me questions about health and wellness, and being young and wanting to be impressionable and wanting to be right, I would tell them what I just felt made sense. And then I would go back home and I would be like, man, was I really right about that? And I would go back and start to kind of research on the topic on what they asked me. And I would be like, I was right. Like, how did I know about that? And it
was like an inherently, well, it's logically, I guess some people also have a brilliance in certain areas that they're drawn to.
Absolutely. It's intuition. It's like, how do you see some children, they're 6 years old and they're playing the piano like they've been playing it for 30 years.
Oh, so, I remember there was a show on where this was on 60 Minutes, I think, many years ago, and there was a child with autism and very bad autism. He couldn't really speak. And then the parents one day in the middle of the night, they hear what they thought was the radio on, and they hear this beautiful piano playing, and they go downstairs and he was just playing away at the piano.
Yeah.
No lessons. Like, where does that come from?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure, it wasn't like you being a doctor. It wasn't like you probably just woke up one day and was like, you know what, I think I'm going to go and be a doctor today. I'm sure something kind of innate, something intuitive about you was like, I really want to help people. What's the best way that I can help people? For me, it's strength and conditioning. For you, it was becoming a doctor.
Yeah, no, it was, my joke is always that when I was born, I saw my mother's feet and I said, that's it, I'm going to be a podiatrist. But the truth of the matter is that, I always had a desire to help people in the medical aspect. It was just always there since I was a kid. And so where it came from, who knows?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And that was your calling, man. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes, sir. So these girls are introducing you to their parents, telling them you're the guy that knows what he wants to do. You're giving out advice that's really working out. Where does it go from there?
Okay, so I realized that at that point when I first started and I started getting into the strength and conditioning aspect, I realized that there was another level to training and conditioning, and that was training athletes. So I was like, this is what I want to do. I went to my strength and conditioning coach that helped me with football at the University of Buffalo, and I said, hey, would I be able to intern under you? I want to learn how to do this stuff. I love working with athletes. I was an athlete. And he said, absolutely. So I became a student strength conditioning coach. I was getting paid about $432 a month. And, but I mean, to me, I was like, I'm doing what I love. This is great.
Sure.
And as I started to now train other athletes in the Olympic sports, swimming and diving, volleyball, soccer, basketball, track and field and whatnot, all of a sudden, the athletes that I were training were surpassing the other coaches' programs. And I had
Ooh, what a great feeling that is.
Right, right. I had the assistant strength conditioning coach come up to me, and she looked me square in the eyes, and she goes, "How long have you been doing this?" And I said, "Really, not even a year so far." And she looked at me and she goes, "You would be a phenomenal head coach at any university right now."
Wow.
And to get some type of feedback like that, being so young and being so what I considered to be inexperienced, all I was doing what I loved, and I was trying to do the best job that I could at it. And I really I was taken aback by it. So after that, those 2 years of being a student strength conditioning coach, one of my friends that played football, Koulibaly, real big African American guy. He came straight from Africa. I mean, this guy was massive.
How big was he?
Gentlest. He was probably 6'3", 6'4", about 245.
Big guy. Wow.
Yeah, and I mean the gentlest giant. You see this guy walking, and you're kind of like getting out of the way, and then but he would just want to come up and give you a hug. I mean, just the nicest guy. I started looking for graduate assistant strength conditioning positions. I was applying to Stanford. I was applying to Columbia. I was applying to Missouri. I was applying to all these places and just deny. Finally, I ended up seeing that there was a position open at the University of Hawaii. And I was like, my goodness.
University of Hawaii. That sounds great. Wow.
Yep.
Wait. So you went from living in upstate New York in the freezing ice, ice skating, to going to Hawaii.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
So I was looking at it, and I was the coach had asked to do a video, demonstrate exercises. And I was just like, man, I was like, there's no way. If I'm getting denied from all these other places, there's no way. So my friend Kula came in the next day, and he was like, hey, bro, how's the search going for graduate assistant positions? Man, I just keep on getting denied. And I said, there's this spot open for the University of Hawaii, but I have to do a video and demonstrate exercise and everything. I'm like, bro, it's just too much. And he looks at me dead in the face, and he goes, oh, okay, cool. So you want me to bring my camera in tomorrow and film you?
Wow.
And, I thought about it for about 10 seconds, and I was like, yeah, bro, do it. So he ended up bringing his camera in the next day. It was like 7 p.m. and we closed the gym down. I demonstrated all the exercises, sent my video off, and it was about a 3-month process, but I ended up getting the job. So I told my parents, I'm like, Mom, Dad, I got a graduate assistant position. They're going to pay for my master's degree, and they're going to pay me to work at the university. And my mother was beside herself. She was so proud. She went out to Party City and bought all these little palm trees and
that's great.
A big plastic sheet that said Aloha, and she hung it on my door in my dorm over at the University at Buffalo. And she was so stoked for me. And I touched down in Hawaii, and I realized 2 things. I was like, number one, this is my career for the rest of my life. Okay.
At that point, you just knew. You're like, I'm done. I'm cooked. Okay.
Yeah. And number 2 was, I'm never going back to a cold climate ever again in my life.
Why did you tell me that? I'm sitting in New Jersey in a snowstorm right now. You're telling me this.
I got a lot of family. I got family and friends up in New York right now, and everybody's texting me. Everybody's posting everything on Facebook, and they're just like, "Oh my goodness, it's 50-mile-an-hour winds and 10 inches of snow."
That's right.
It's like it is.
Now, where are you right now? Because where do you live?
I live in Lighthouse Point, Florida. We're sandwiched up against the water, right in the middle of Pompano Beach. So,
okay. So you decided Hawaii, or you're just sticking with the warmer temperatures.
Yeah. Well, what had ended up happening was in Hawaii, Davone Bess, whom you mentioned earlier, he came straight from jail to the University of Hawaii to play football. And nobody wanted to mess with him. Everybody was kind of like, dude, you're bad news. And I was kind of the guy that helped people get onto the football team. And I was the guy that helped the guys that weren't starting on the football team become starters. In this same respect, every single guy that's playing college football, they're going to the NFL. they're going to look at you and they're telling you, yeah, bro, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to be a pro football player.
Right, right.
It's just like, come on, man. There's some guys, they just want to talk about it, and then other guys really want it. So with
I'm going to ask you, like, let's just go with that for 1 second. So
Okay.
when you're working with these top athletes, right, do you know immediately who's got it in their head? Like, it's more of a head game, I guess. Can you pick that up? Can you start talking to somebody and say, listen, this guy's going to make it, not based necessarily on their physical prowess, but based on their mental prowess?
No. What I can do is I can identify who has the talent physically, and then when they start my training regimen, we find out if they have it mentally.
Okay.
Okay, so a lot of guys, they're going to
process.
talk a real good game, but once they start to get under that heavy bar and once they start pushing these heavy sleds, you truly start to see who they are. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely I fell in love to coaching CrossFit and also training and competing in CrossFit, because when you suffer, you truly see who somebody is. You strip down the ego. You strip down everything that person is resisting against, and you find out who they truly are and what their values truly represent.
Wow, that's sort of symbolic of life itself, right?
Absolutely. It goes back to the whole wartime brotherhood thing. When you are suffering with somebody, you see who they are. Do they run away? Do they cheat their reps? Do they cheat their range of motion in order to try and beat you and get some sort of, in-gym prestige? Or are they sitting there and staying true to their form, true to their self, and true to their repetition count? Okay,
Wow.
and this is what happens too, especially when you're training athletes. As athletes can be some of the laziest people in the world. You turn your back for a second, they did 10 reps. And you're just like, wait a minute, come on, man. And it was really, really difficult. And that's what I had to test Davone with. I gave him a sheet of paper. He came and asked me for help. I told him no the first 3 times. And then he came again and asked me, and I gave him a sheet of paper. I said, here you go, bro, just do this. And I watched him whenever he came in. All right, let me see what he's doing. And he did everything that I asked him to do on that sheet of paper to a T. So then I finally came up to him and I said, are you ready to stop messing around? And he's like, what do you mean, bro? Like, this stuff is hard. And I said, this is the base program right here.
Ooh,
and
wow.
I said, that was the test. Okay. And I said,
so you're testing him out there. Nobody's going near this guy, and you're actually like seeing what he's made at, what his metal is.
And that was my mental test right there. I needed to see if his head was in the right place. So we started to train, and his first year at the University of Hawaii, he was All-American. I think he had something like 120 catches, 1,100 yards receiving. And from there, his second year, he was all WAC. His third year, he was all WAC. That's Western Athletic Conference. And then he got a free agent deal with the Miami Dolphins, and I helped him keep his body healthy and recommended a couple of supplements for him to repair himself. And he ended up making the team. So 2 years after that, he signed a big contract, and he called me up and he said, all right, bro, you ready? And I'm like, ready for what? He's like, you ready to come out here and be my trainer and help?
No way.
Yeah. And I said, absolutely, absolutely. I've always been a big fan of Florida. So he brought me down here, and that's why I'm still here.
Oh, wow. What a great story. What a great story.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let me ask, so you got this, when you're training somebody at that level, give us an idea. What is different about the training for a top athlete and somebody that's not, right? Somebody that's just wants to work out, stay in shape. Like what's that range of difference? How many hours a week? What's the diet like? Just go into a little bit of detail on that.
It's extraordinarily comprehensive. All right. So one of the things that I do with my mobility program is that I have a book that's going to be coming out about that too at the end of April, beginning of May. But what I do with my mobility program is I tell people, I say there's 3 parts to it. You need to release the muscle tissue through some form of massage or pressure. Okay. You need then to stretch the muscle tissue in order to pull the cross bridges apart and restore sliding surfaces. and then you need to strengthen the muscle tissue. And oftentimes when people go to a normal doctor, to a family doctor, or they go to a chiropractor, or they go to an acupuncturist or a physical therapist, they're only applying parts of that paradigm to relieving their pain. So that's why they only get partial results. When you go from just being a Joe Schmo, I go to the gym and work out, to I want to improve my performance and perform on a very, very high level, you need all aspects. You need to look at nutrition. You need to look at your strength training. You need to look at your conditioning. You need to look at your recovery methods, your mobility, your sleep, and definitely 100% your nutrition. So number one, right off the bats, we need to eliminate a lot of grains and a lot of inflammation producing markers. Okay.
You know what, Chris, you're blowing me away. I'm getting this from so many different sources that are saying the same thing: eliminate the grains. And
Absolutely.
About 7 weeks ago, I stopped eating all bread, all grains.
Yeah.
And I just weighed myself today. I've been trying to bulk up in terms of weightlifting, but lose the fat, and I'm down 7 pounds without trying.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
phenomenal.
that belly,
There's a gentleman that I just started working with in Ohio. I do a lot of work virtually as well, and he was in a real bad position, man. 52 years old, so tight and so overweight, he couldn't even bend over and touch his toe. Or I'm sorry, he couldn't even bend over and tie his right shoe. Okay, he would have to pick up his foot, put it on a stepper. He'd have to have his wife do it. His stomach was getting in the way, and he was so tight that he couldn't bend down to get his shoe on. So he found me through his brother that I had worked with before, and all we did was eliminate grains, and he is down 11 pounds. I'm sorry, 13. So he just texted me the other day. In 8 days, he lost 13 pounds, and he's not even exercising, Doc.
that's
All he
unbelievable.
did was just change that. And he's like, Chris, my face is looking thinner. He's like, I'm already having to put holes in my belt because my waist is getting smaller. And it's not that grains are they are that extraordinarily bad for you, but when you're introducing them in your diet every meal, it's an accumulation. Okay, you keep on holding a little bit more water day after day after day, and then all of a sudden we wake up and it's just like, man, why am I 10 or 15 pounds heavier than I was before? Like I didn't realize that this was happening because it happened slowly.
Well, I mean, I experienced the same thing. I remember just my belly just started to slowly expand. And one day I'm like, I always said as a kid, I would never allow myself to get that, that guy's gut kind of thing. And there it is. And I couldn't figure out what to do with it.
Yeah. So going back to what you were asking, how is it different training a professional athlete? You are looking at so many different markers and you have to control them all. You really do. And it takes a lot of research and it takes a lot of determination, inspiration, motivation on the athlete's part as well. And Davone was one of the only guys that I trained that really took everything that I said to heart and applied everything that I said to the best of his ability. I told him, I said, bro, you got to get blackout shades. Make sure that your room is absolutely 100% black when you go to sleep, so you have that melatonin production, so your biorhythms and your sleep schedule, everything is always the same, and you're getting the best quality sleep that you can. I tell him in the morning times, we don't want to introduce any type of carbohydrates. We need to control those insulin levels. So this is what you're going to do for breakfast. And then this is what you're going to do for lunch. When you get done training, we're always going to be on the table. We're going to iron your muscles out. We're going to flush everything into the lymph so you recover faster. And
so I'm going to stop you. Give us breakfast. So what is the ideal breakfast?
Okay, so it's one of two things. If you don't like coffee, I always recommend having some form of protein along with fat in the morning. We can't just sit down and have something like a chicken breast. Okay. The reason why is because John Kiefer, he was a physicist turned nutritionist. He ended up doing a whole bunch of research and found out that when we introduce carbohydrates in the morning and we have elevated insulin levels along with our elevated cortisol levels. Cortisol is coming from our adrenal glands. It's a natural cup of coffee that we have as soon as we wake up. Okay. When we have elevated levels of insulin and cortisol at the same time, that sends a signal, okay? It is a Cro-Magnon man signal to our brain that says, dude, we're getting sweets this early in the morning. Start making new fat cells.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay.
And then what ends up happening, we never thought that fat really did too much in the human body. We thought that, it cushioned our organs and okay, it was an energy source if we were starving. But now, in the last 10 years, all the research that's coming out is fat is extremely bioactive. So those fat cells send signals to the brain that say, hey, I want to get full. So what ends up happening is 2 hours later, we're reaching for another granola bar after our cereal or our pancakes or our oatmeal in the morning. And then what are we doing at lunch? It's like, man, I'm starting to get tired. I'm starting to get hungry again. We have a sandwich, more grains, more carbohydrates, more sugar. And what ends up happening is your brain and your fat cells keep on sending signals back and forth to each other. Like, dude, I'm hungry. Okay, get sugar. Oh, I'm good. Dude, I'm hungry again. And we just don't find that with fat. We don't find that with fat. When we eat fat, large amounts of good, healthy fat that are coming from animal sources or natural sources. I'm not talking about, the 13 grams of saturated fat that's in your Starbucks muffin. That's not what we're looking for.
What are you talking about? Like, give us an example of some good fats for breakfast.
Bacon and eggs, something like that. If you're going to have any type of processed foods like bacon or sausage in the morning, I always highly recommend having fermented foods along with that, something like sauerkraut, something like kimchi, maybe if you have a kombucha in your fridge, which is fermented tea, okay? And what that fermentation does is it neutralizes what we call N-nitroso compounds that are in the processed meat, okay? It comes from the heme, from the actual blood of whatever animal you happen to be eating at the time. So there was a big study that came out showing from the World Health Organization showing that eating red meat causes cancer. Okay, and this is a huge. It's largely misinterpreted. So when you break down the science, you start to see that really what they were talking about. They're not talking about red meat. They are talking about processed meat. Okay. And with my book, The Death of the Diet, what I tell people is, I tell people all the time, I'm a vegan that eats a lot of meat. Okay, so basically, I eat a lot of vegetables and I eat a bunch of meat along with it. What I don't eat is a whole bunch of processed meat. I'm not going and having chicken McNuggets. Okay, I'm not going and having any type of even the processed paleo bars that are coming out where you look and you have something on there that says brown rice syrup. And I'm like, look,
what is that?
Label it organic. What is it? They label it organic. They label it natural. So people believe that that is a healthier option than, let's say, a Quaker Oats granola bar. Okay, which it may be, but still on some level, how do they extract that syrup from the rice? How are they making that? What chemicals are they using? What are the methods? Okay, and we just don't know. So it's processed. I don't care how many organic or natural, all natural tags it has on it. It's processed. Okay.
Christopher, like when you're looking at meat, then are you looking at like grass-fed meat as well?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Cows are herbivores. That's all they do is feed off of grass. So when we start giving cows grains, yeah, it's still a vegetarian diet, and you're going to see on a lot of packaged meat, it's going to say not fed any hormones, all vegetarian diet. That usually means that they're feeding them grains, okay, in order to fatten them up. It's not an indigenous diet for the cow, so the cow gets fatter. We have different types of fats that are in the cow now that we don't really want to eat, all right? They have omega-6 and omega-9 fats where grass-fed cows, they have not only a lot more micronutrients in their meat, but now their fat, the yellow fat, becomes omega-3.
Omega-3, which is the good one. Yep.
Yes, and that is what I say in my book is one of the biggest causes of diseases, okay, for any type of cardiovascular disease or just getting overweight or unhealthy in general is our ratios of omega-3 to omega-6 and omega-9 fatty acids, okay? And omega-3s come primarily from all of our plant sources, and if we're eating any type of grass-fed beef. Our omega-6 and 9s come from all of our land animals. And if you look at the typical American diet, people will be like, well, I'm eating a lot of red meat, but you're also eating a lot of processed foods as well. So the combination of the poor red meat in combination with the processed foods, no, you're not eating according to what I'm saying.
Well, I tell you, I'm coming to an understanding of what you're saying, probably really over the last 7 weeks, having interviewed so many different guests, having changed my diet. And when you come to this realization and you walk into a grocery store, there's almost no food there. I mean, there's, it's like, wait a second, there's no food. How do you, well, I guess you have to train your athletes in this too. Or do you ever get that complaint from the athletes where they're like, what can I eat?
All the time. And with my nutrition guides, okay, I refuse to call them diets. What I give people is what I call an allowable food list. So my diets, they are nutrient restrictive. They are not calorically restrictive. Okay. And this benefits my athletes in two ways. Number one, they can look at this sheet and say, they can go out anywhere and say, okay, what can I have based off of this? And they don't have to measure the calories. Okay.
Okay.
So that leads into number two. A lot of times you get people on diets and the practitioner will say, you cannot eat anything past 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Now, I went and worked all day. I went and worked out. I am ravenously hungry. It's 9 p.m. This sucks.
Right.
And what I tell my athletes is, look, I don't care how much you eat. You can eat whatever you want as long as it's on the list at that particular time. Okay.
Well, Chris, let me ask you, because with these athletes, I'm assuming some of them you want to bulk up muscle-wise, right?
Some, yes.
So somebody like that's not eating the grains, they're going to eat, what would they eat to start to put on more weight but more muscular weight? What would you have them do?
What I primarily do is I have them backload their carbs, just like John Kiefer talks about, okay? And we do this once every 7 days. So they will have some grains, but they're having grains once every 7 days, sometimes once every 10 days, okay? Really, really skinny guys that need to put on weight, it's once every 5 days. All right. So,
and what would they eat? Like a bowl of spaghetti or something?
No. What they would do is they would sit down after their heaviest training session of that week, and at night. So typically after 6 p.m., where we don't get this whole cortisol, insulin kind of negative feedback loop where we're making new fat cells, they will sit down and eat a lean piece of meat, chicken or fish, something like that, and then we will have them actually backload their sugar. Okay, so they'll eat typically something, they'll drink some almond milk, they'll have some donuts or cookies if they wanted, and I always recommend coconut ice cream as well. Okay, so we don't get that whole dairy aspect going on. And people, they'll sit down and watch this person eat and they're like, oh my God, that's so incredibly healthy. But the thing about it is we are doing it once a week, if that, sometimes once every 10 days. And that allows the body time to detoxify some of the bad. But what ends up happening is we shuttle a lot of good into the body as well. And what ends up happening is we refill their sugar stores in the cells to the point where they wake up the next day and they'll gain like 1 to 1.5 pounds of lean body mass the next day, and they'll actually lose a little bit of fat in the process.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Okay, so what we end up doing is we create kind of like a sponge effect in the body. Okay, we starve the body of grains, of carbohydrates, of sugar. And then it gets to the point where and it's different for everybody. You kind of have to gauge, and basically it's the day that you wake up, you feel really, really dry. You feel almost kind of like a type of skinny fatness going on. And you go to the gym and you're just like, man, I have no energy. That's
Okay.
when you are fully glycogen depleted. And
Gotcha.
then what we end up doing, okay, tonight's the night. Hit this workout as hard as you can at about 3, 4 p.m. When you get done, we wait an hour for what we call a hormetic effect to occur in the body. Okay. The macrophages and a whole bunch of other immune system properties go around. They scrub everything in the body, they clean it up, and then we start to backload our carbs. And the athletes, the people that I've helped with this, they become absolutely fascinated by the physiology behind it. And that's the difference between hiring a strength conditioning coach or somebody who actually studies physiology and just a regular personal trainer at, let's say, LA Fitness that's
Right, right,
making
right, right.
25, $30 an hour. You have direction, which is great. That's great. I'm not trying to knock these guys at all, but there's a much, much greater level of things that you can control. And in an athlete's case, and in a professional athlete's case, it's absolutely necessary. It's 100% necessary.
Christopher, I love this information. One final question here for you, and then we'll sort of start to wind down. But
Okay.
is it possible to gain muscle, get protein from things like spinach and leafy vegetables and things like that? Is that possible?
It is, man. It really is. And I don't have a whole lot of research backing it, but all I can say is that there are vegan bodybuilders and there are vegan athletes, okay, that obviously can maintain muscle mass or increase it. And when I talk to people about the body, I say, look, you guys need to understand that everybody is different but the same. Okay, we all have the same digestive markers and everything like that, but what works, how your body actually goes about digesting food will be different from how my body goes about digesting food. Okay.
Okay.
And basically, when I see people going from being, processed and meat eaters to being like, I don't like the way that I feel, I'm going to go vegetarian or vegan, and they lose all this weight. Basically, it's just cutting all of those inflammatory and processed food markers out of your diet that ends up helping you lose weight. Now, if you can actually gain muscle with doing things like that, then in all honesty, that just may be how your body operates best.
I mean, can
Okay,
you gain muscle and lose fat at the same time? Is that
yeah,
possible? You
yeah,
can,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Okay.
Especially with the carb backloading that was popularized by John Kiefer and what I use with my athletes. Absolutely, you just need to be aware of how to do it. That's all. You just need the steps, and I lay everything out in my book, The Death of the Diet, for everybody.
Wow, Christopher, this has been an incredible interview. Let me ask you a final question here. So
Okay.
we're looking for the holy grail of health, right? What would you say if I were to ask that, pose that question to you?
Okay.
What would you consider the holy grail of health?
Two things. Number one, regulate your fat intake. Okay. And when I say that, I'm saying we need a fat intake, a ratio of omega-3 fatty acids 1 to 6 and 9. Okay. So omega-3 fatty acids 1, omega-6 and 9 fatty acids 1. That's what we're looking.
Mhm.
Typically, the American diet right now is 20-1
Ooh,
omega-6 and 9s to omega-3s. Okay? So we're getting 20 times the omega-6 and 9s that we need. What are some good sources of omega-3s? Number one is coconut milk in a can. Okay?
okay.
I absolutely love Trader Joe's, or I believe it's Thai Kitchen or Native Forest. Those three brands, get the coconut milk in a can. If you're getting it in a carton or a plastic bottle, it frustrates me because they strip all of the fat out. And that's what the media, that's what the carbohydrate industry does to us. They make us afraid of the fat. So these companies take a naturally fatty fruit, okay? And then they end up stripping all the fat out of it to sell it in a supermarket so it'll actually sell.
Christopher, this is so powerful. So say the name. So you want coconut milk in a can. What were the names again?
So Trader Joe's, absolutely phenomenal. They have organic, which is, once again, like you said, like what can you eat? It kind of gets frustrating. So a lot of these coconut milks, they have guar gum or xanthan gum in them as an emulsifier, so they mix well with liquid. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And what Trader Joe's has actually done was they started making organic now coconut milk and coconut cream in the can, and all it says on there on the ingredients is fresh pressed coconut milk. There's no
that's crazy.
Gum, there's no guar gum.
How can you eat something like that? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. And what I do is I mix it with my coffee every morning.
Wow.
So rather than putting dairy in my coffee, I'm now putting the omega-3 fatty acids from the coconut milk, and it's incredibly delicious. It's like a coconut coffee milkshake. I don't know anybody that wouldn't like something like that. But what Trader Joe's is doing is phenomenal. But the thing is, now when I put it into my coffee, you kind of have like a little bit of an oily layer on top. And then you have the rest of the milk solids and everything that sink, and it makes it look like light brown, like a latte type of thing.
Yes,
and but you don't have the xanthan gum. So it is an innate substance, but we haven't been using it long enough to understand what that innate substance does in our body. How does it get rid of it? So what are we doing? Are we storing toxins? Is this something that may turn into cancer later on down the line in the future? Can our body even get rid of it? Type of thing. Okay. It doesn't have any effect on our health that we know of right now, but 50 years later, are we going to find something out? Who knows? Right. So why not try to eradicate it? Why not try to get it out? Okay. My secondary source of omega-3 fatty acids would definitely be your grass-fed meat. Okay. And some people may appreciate taking krill oil. It's a little bit on the expensive side, but krill is only found in the Arctic waters. Okay. Very, very clean waters. And they use a cold pressed method to extract it. Okay.
Okay.
When manufacturers are making oils, and especially fish oil, what they do is they use a heat pressed method, which actually starts to harm and destroy the oil in the process. So what you end up consuming is just a lesser grade of an oil, and you need to consume more of it in order to get the same effect. Okay. We don't want to consume damaged oils at all. Very, very, very bad for our body.
Okay.
So that's why I recommend the cold pressed coconut milk in a can or coconut cream in a can. And all you have to do is look on the can. If it has 9 grams of saturated fats or higher, that's the good stuff. If it has 1 to 2 grams of sugars, that's fine. Okay. Some coconut cream will actually be like a super duper concentrated coconut. So you'll look at it and it'll say maybe 7 to 9 grams of saturated fat, but 25 grams of sugar. That is not what we want to put in our coffee. Remember, we don't want sugar in the morning. We just want those good fats. Okay. And coconut oil or fats from coconut, the saturated fat, it comes in the form of medium chain triglycerides, which are only utilized for energy in the body. They cannot be stored. Okay. So for all your listeners too, if they're, saturated fat still kind of makes me a little bit iffy, the saturated fat in coconut is MCTs. They're medium chain triglycerides. It's used by the body and the brain for energy. It's not used. It cannot be stored. Cannot be stored. Okay?
Unbelievable.
The second one, the second marker that I would say is to regulate your insulin levels. Now, a lot of nutritionists want to talk about, you got to keep your insulin levels normalized, so you need a lot of small meals during the day. I eat 2 meals per day. Okay, I'm up at 6:30 a.m. and I'm usually going to bed around 10:30, 11 o'clock p.m. In between, I'm doing a lot of writing. I'm doing a lot of my soft tissue work for clients, and I'm doing probably about an hour to an hour and a half of weight training via CrossFit per day. Okay. I have my coffee in the morning, which has tons of good fats in it. I have my lunch at around noon, 1 o'clock, and then I have dinner around 7 to 8, something like that. and I think it was, oh man, Bernie Sanders, the Zone Diet. I was listening to him speak, and he said, look, if you are eating meals that level your hormones, what's going to happen is you're not going to be hungry. You're going to be satiated for 5 to 6 to 7 hours at a time.
Okay.
That is how we are truly regulating our blood sugar and our insulin levels. And I truly believe that the health of the body is dictated by how often you are releasing insulin in the body. So the less that you're doing it, the healthier you are going to be. And it's carbohydrates, it's sugars, it's the grains that end up stimulating that insulin production from our pancreas. Okay, so
that's amazing. Let me ask you, what did you have for dinner last night? What did you have for dinner last night?
Dinner last night was a very large salad. So I had spinach in there, I had romaine lettuce, I had arugula with a olive oil and tahini dressing on there. And then I had 3 different types of meat. I had I got it from Whole Foods. I had 3 orange chicken nuggets that I had in there. And then I had a Jamaican jerk chicken thigh, and then I had some beef stew that I put on there. So that's what I had. I had that at 8 p.m. last night, and I woke up this morning. I felt absolutely amazing. I wasn't hungry, and I slept like a baby. So this is what we're talking about when we just want to normalize our blood sugar levels. A lot of people wake up with hunger pangs. They're extraordinarily hungry in the morning. Okay. One of my little hacks, my little tricks for keeping your blood sugar normalized while you sleep is having a small sip of Bragg's apple cider vinegar. And what we find out is that Bragg's apple cider vinegar actually competes with the sugar and insulin receptors on your cells. Okay? So it competes with sugar for those receptors. So you can actually even eat a little bit of sugar. And if you have that sip of Bragg's apple cider vinegar, what's going to happen is not as much sugar is going to be able to attach to those cells to spike your insulin to such an alarming rate. And what I find is that I actually sleep better, and I wake up in the morning and my blood sugar is still normalized. I'm still okay. But once again, Dr. Dan, what does sugar taste like? Or I'm sorry, what does vinegar taste like?
It's not great. It's not great.
Vinegar. Right? It's vinegar. So I tell people about it, and they're like, "Oh man, that tastes terrible." And I say, "It's vinegar." And this is the thing. Do you want to do the lifetime cost of a heart attack is $150,000. The lifetime cost of cancer is 10 times that. So do you want to buy an $8 bottle of apple cider vinegar and have a little sip every night? Or do you want to be comfortable, not taste that vinegar before you go to bed and brush your teeth, and potentially have a heart attack or potentially have pancreatic cancer because of the amount of sugar and the types of things that we're eating? And for me, $5 in prevention is worth $500,000 in correction. That's the way that
Christopher Kidawski, what you're saying is you want people to take back their health now, which is the name of our show, which is exactly.
Take it back now.
That's right, my friend. That's right. Listen, I got to tell you, I could talk to you for hours here, man. I definitely would love to have you back on the show at some point, because I know we talked a little bit before we went on the air. We didn't get to cover a lot of the stuff we wanted to, so I apologize about that. But I definitely want to have you back. How would people that want to know more about you, know more about your book, how would they get in touch with you?
They can do it in 2 ways. Number one, just go to my website, downloadingdaily.com, or my books are on Amazon. All you have to do is search for my name, Christopher J. Kidawski, and I have The Death of the Diet on there. I have my spiritual / self-improvement book called The Everspace on there as well, and my author bio is on Amazon as well, and people can just read up about me and see what I've been up to.
Christopher Kidawski, thank you so much for being on this show, sir.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
This episode is sponsored by New Jersey Foot and Ankle Center in Oradell, New Jersey. Remember, when you have a foot problem, you've got a foot doctor in the family. Weekend and evening appointments are available. Call us at 201-261-9445. Once again, that's 201-261-9445. Thanks for listening. Check out the show notes over at drdanspeaks.com. If you're loving the show, head over to iTunes and leave us a review, and we'll catch you next time. Voiceovers for this episode were provided by Randy Ramos Jr. To see and hear more of his work, visit randyramosjr.com, jr.com, 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 jr.com.